they're going to need winds that die down, and not just during the eye, right? Because they're all sophisticated enough to know what you're telling us right now. And it just makes me wonder if we're seeing this here. What is the situation for the people if they're still in homes as we get down there towards where that surge is much closer to that 10 to 15 feet that you were talking about? Control room, do we have Ed Lavandera? Is he down there? I wonder what the water is looking like for him on the ground. Do we have him, Ed?
Yeah, I'm here, Chris. Can you hear me? We're adjusting the camera here a second. The winds have settled down a little bit, so that gives us a little bit of opportunity to adjust and give a little bit better perspective. That was an unreal hour and a half, I suspect, of intensity that we've seen here down on the streets of downtown Naples. Now the winds have died down enough we can kind of show you a little bit of what we experienced here. Look at all the, that's to be expected, those tree limbs there. This is part of the tiles that came flying off the roof of the building that we're in there. And now we've gotten a little bit better view, and you can really start to see a little bit of the tree damage is to be expected. Soon as all of this passes through, and now it's starting to kick up again. Thought we had a little bit of a break there to give you a little bit better perspective, but that's what we're facing there. Obviously, the tree damage is going to be unbelievably extensive through Naples. That's to be expected. The damage to the rest of the infrastructure, we're not in a position to really gauge here at this point. We're just in the process of trying to withstand and endure what this hurricane is bringing here to Southwest Florida. So, but now the visibility is back, which is stunning, because now we can see several more 100 yards through the trees here that we've been providing you the live picture from, and you can see that the floodwaters and the amount of water that is collected and pocketed up in various parts of the street. That's going to be even worse on the backside of this storm as the storm surge starts coming in from the Gulf side. And what you've seen there along that main street that you're on is extensive as well, and that's going to be even worse in some of the more lower lying areas. The area we're in, we picked obviously because it's set up a little bit higher here in the city, but in those parts where it's much more lower lying, and as soon as we can get to those areas in the hours ahead, be able to report a little bit more extensively and give people a better picture of what has occurred here. But the intensity of that is just unreal, and it is just unbelievable to describe what we have endured here for nearly 2 hours, Chris.
All right, hey Ed, they're telling us that the eye is passing over. It doesn't feel like it, Chad. I thought the eye was supposed to be like this piece of calm where you look up and you see the sky or whatever it is. We're still getting a hit here. In fact, I want Dave to sneak out if he can now that it's not as nasty. I want to show them the storm surge. And, hey, Ed, just get in my ear real quick and tell me, how far is the hotel from the marina again? I forget from when I was walking down there this morning. Was it like 8 blocks? Just to give a sense of proportion of how much water we have. There's two different bodies.
Yeah, I can hear you, Chris. There's 2 different bodies of water that we have to keep tabs on. On the west side of us, we have the Gulf of Mexico. We're probably about a good 8 blocks from that. That's that direction. If you look back over here toward the east, about a mile or so is where that marina is and where the river that comes in on the east side of Naples, and that is going to be the area of real concern because that storm surge gets pushed back in there, and then that starts kind of fanning its way out through the neighborhoods, and so that marina is about a mile away.
All right, Ed, I got you. Let me get Dave out here, the PJ, our photojournalist, part of the team here, just to try and get you down this street. Big man, let's come over this way and show them down the street. Because if we're 8 blocks away, you go past me, Dave, and show them, and get down that street. So we're 8 blocks away. So, Chad, just to give you some perspective on this, all right? Here's 8 blocks away, and this is about, you look at the yellow curb here at 5th Avenue South and Park Street, and you're at about 8 inches to 10 inches of water, okay, right here. And as you can see, the buildings are fine. That part of the integrities are right. You know, you got your typical debris here from that gusting. But when you look down the street, you see that there's been breach there, at least on one side of the street. The water has gotten into the buildings, and it's got to be well over a foot or so deep, and that's still 6.5, 7 blocks from the marina. So how does that fill in the blanks for you?
What that is freshwater flooding. That is the rain that came down and went into the lowest part of that city, and that is all fresh water. That has no salinity content in it whatsoever, because the water that is from the salinity from the ocean, the Gulf of Mexico, has not truly arrived yet. We've been watching the quick rise from the tidal gauges in Naples. A brand new flash flood emergency for Naples just issued about 5 minutes ago, and so the water is still at the mean sea level right now, but it is quickly rising, and it will rise 10 to 15 feet. I mean, this is almost waiting for a tsunami, although it won't be a tidal wave. It'll be a surge where one wave that comes up that station that is, let's say, 5 feet above sea level, you will see 5 feet or 10 feet on top of that. The one wave will come in, it'll be kind of a wash, like a wave without a crest or a curl, and then that will stay. And then the next wave will come in, and the first one won't go away like it usually does at the seashore. The next wave's going to come in, and it won't go away. And then the next wave's going to come in, and it won't go away. And this is not what you want to do.
Yeah.
You do not want to be out with your dog
Chad,
when the water's coming up.
So, Chad, he's got his three-legged dog. He says he's lucky. Hold on. Hey, pal. He's walking his dog. We saw him last night. I see you're out with the dog again. You got to get back inside, pal. We got the backside of the storm still to come. The surge isn't here yet. Please get back in. I'll come find you after. All right, now most of the people here, Chad, there's a lot of media. The good news is, again, they believe that most of who needed to evacuate did. We saw that local last night trying to shoo somebody back inside. They poked out to see because we're starting to get more violent gusts. And we get the inconsistency of the message. We're saying, hey, don't come out here, it's dangerous, and they see us out here. But again, we are here in part to satisfy that kind of curiosity, to inform of what the situation is on the ground, to let people know and first responders know what's going on with the situations in their area. But you don't want to be out here if you don't have to be. All right, let's get to Ed Lavandera. I understand you found a way, Ed, to show people what's going on without exposing yourself to too much of it, because this is definitely picked up. So what do you have, my friend?
Hey, look, just so people understand what we're doing, we are inside, or kind of tucked away underneath a building that is protected on 3 sides, so it shields, especially our photographer, from the worst of these winds, and we're able to kind of jump in and out of the scene here as safely as we can. So that's kind of the way we operate, so that people understand if they do have that curiosity. But we are watching the winds as the camera angle that you're looking at from where our viewpoint here is looking toward the south, toward the eye of Hurricane Irma, and that is crossing the Marco Island area, which is about 20 miles south of where we are, and you can see the intensity of the winds here, by far the strongest we have experienced all day. I anticipate that this will only continue to worsen here over the next couple of hours. And that wind you see pushing from the left side of your screen.
All right, we lost Ed's shot. We'll make sure that he's okay. Oh, he's back now. Keep going, Ed, if you can.
Back. All right, Chris, we're still here. Sure. As I was saying, the winds you're seeing are moving from the east to the west across your screen there. We are on what appears to be, and this might have changed here in the last couple of minutes. Chad Myers can clarify a little bit better, but it sounds.
I lost IFB. All right. So Ed lost communications. Not unusual in this kind of situation, especially when it starts to pick up. We'll get him back. What we're dealing with here, though, in Naples, is exactly what they were worried about. This sustained battering of wind and rain. And then there's another huge component, which is going to be the storm surge. I don't know if you could hear Ed Lavandera and Chad Myers earlier talking to us about it, but they were saying that where the water should be, it's now gone. That's part of the energy exchange system of this hurricane, this counterclockwise force. It dumps it on one side, it pulls it out of the other. Chad Myers, if I can bring you in here, we haven't had that water come back yet, at least not in the main, and when it does, it's going to be bringing friends in the form of a surge. That's what we're worried about. How will this combine with that flow of water? What will the net effect of that be on this population?
Well, just issued was a flash flood emergency. Now, that is above flash flood warning, and that is because the water will come crashing back on shore and is about to do so here at Marco. If you are, let's say, here, your winds are now beginning to push this direction, and this entire area from Everglades City all the way back down into the Everglades, flooding, flash flooding, 10 to 15 feet. If you're still here in Naples, the wind blowing offshore and not bringing your water in yet. But Marco, the eye just went by you. And as soon as that eye gets to the other side, all of a sudden the wind are going to shift and the wind are going to move that water back in. So from where we are now, Chris, in your harbor, somewhere 4 feet below where we should be, we're going to push all this water back in and possibly be 15 feet above where we should be. It's the bubble of water that happens below a hurricane because the air is being sucked in. It's a low pressure. There is a bubble of water, and yet there's also the forward motion. Well, now the forward motion of that bubble has stopped. It has stopped because land is now in the way. For a while, Key West was in the way, and so was Cudjoe Key, but those were just islands, and the water just ripped right on by. The water kept going, and now it's smashing on shore from Marco back over to Everglades City and eventually to Naples. Now, if we can get Chris's shot back, I can see Chris now. The wind is still picking up for you. You have at least another 30 miles per hour to go, Chris. So all we're trying to do with your shot is stay on the air because we want you to be safe, but we also want the people just north of you to know what they have in store because it's coming.
No, that is definitely the point, and I appreciate the concern. And my PJ is a good man, but Dave, I need you to pop off the sticks for a second and come up here, just so we can give them a sense, because you're right. If you are in Naples or in parts north, you have to understand here's what's coming your way, because these cities are very similarly constructed. Pan to your right, Dave. All right? This is where it's happening. These trees, these structures here have been taking it for hours, and we are seeing them start to give way. There were more of them not so long ago, and a lot of them, as you can see, they're going to be particularly vulnerable. And the concern is, where do they go? When these trees start to come, with these gusts that are increasing, where do they go? What windows do they hit? What structures do they hit? What does it do to power? What do they rip up with them from under the ground? And then what does the soaking storm surge do to those situations? All right, get back inside there. What happens? Help Dave get inside. What happens once these trees have ripped up? You good? You good? Once these trees have ripped up with their root system, a lot of the power here that is underground and the water rushes into it, that's when you get a power outage. Now we're nearing about 2 million customers here without power. Now it's flooded. And that goes from hours or days to weeks for recovery. Now, I believe Ed Lavandera is back up. Ed, if that's true, pipe up and let me know what you're seeing from where you are.
Here. All right. I think we got cut off a little bit last time, but we fixed up our microphone situation here a little bit better. But as you were saying, Chris, earlier, the winds you're seeing on the north side of this storm pushing from the east toward the west, and that is what you're seeing right now. And as the eye wall of this storm gets closer, the winds will only intensify them. If the eye does come right over where we are, we'll obviously have that lull here in the system for some time. But that does not mean by any means that the threat is over. Then the winds shift. We'll be on the backside of the storm. The winds will come from the west to the east, and that is the concern of the storm surge. Officials here have been saying over the last couple of days that storm surge could reach anywhere 10 to 15 feet. We've already seen water several blocks away from where we are starting to rise in some residential neighborhoods. The question is, where exactly is all that water going to go, and how high will it go? But once the storm passes through, and it is the Gulf waters that are starting to get pushed in here inland, that will be of major concern and something we'll have to continue to monitor. Everyone here that I've spoken with in Naples over the last 24 hours measures hurricanes by what happened here in 2005, Hurricane Wilma. Talking to the mayor yesterday, he said, I asked him if that's a fair comparison, if that's really any way to kind of prepare for this. He acknowledged, look, that's the only barometer we have at this point, Hurricane Wilma, and that was an incredibly strong storm here in this part of southwest Florida. But whether or not it will be any true indication of what this storm and hurricane is bringing remains to be seen. But that's their measuring stick at this point. I have a feeling that Hurricane Irma is going to be a completely separate measuring stick for this community as they see what kind of damage this storm surge here brings to this community. You can see and feel the intensity of these winds. Chris, we pan back over here to the left. You look back over here at this one particular structure. All the structures around us that I see continue to hold up rather well. It's this tarp on top of this rec center area over here that is still of major concern. You know, when you're looking into the rain, it's very disconcerting. You don't know. I'm going to step out here a little bit, so we'll leave up that shot so I can speak a little bit more clearly. But it is that tarp there as it buckles up and down, and wondering just how much longer it is going to last and whether or not it's just going to rip apart from that structure and just get shredded here in those winds. So we'll continue to monitor that, Chris, as these winds and the eye of Hurricane Irma gets much closer here to Naples, Florida, in the southwest corner of the state.
Well, this is what they were worried about, is that a place like Naples that's already very tight to sea level was going to get hit for a long time by Hurricane Irma, and unfortunately, that's what seems to be happening. Dave, if you can pan over to the left, this is the direction that Ed is. You can see the water coming in sheets sideways. You know, obviously the wind is going the way that the trees are going, but there are sheets of water going that way, and each one is like another punch, you know, another tenderizing blow. And this is a fight of many different rounds, and they've been taking it for round after round here. And remember, what the knockout is from Chad Meyer's perspective is this storm surge. And we still haven't seen it yet, but there is flooding around Ed Lavandera. Do you think that that's just groundwater and rain that you're seeing there, Ed, or do you think it's some kind of sign of water coming from the Gulf side?
No, I don't think water is coming from the Gulf side yet. I think a lot of this is rainwater that is pulling up on some of the lower lying areas of the street. Obviously, that was based on what we saw this morning. You know, the last time we were able to venture out into some of the neighborhoods was about 2 to 3 hours ago, and then it just became too treacherous and dangerous for us to get out there, so we had to pull back. But I think for now, what we've seen is rainwater pooling up in various locations, but that just adds to the problems because the storm surge will come in over the top of that. And we haven't been able to make it over to the riverside here of Naples, where there is an extensive marina system. A lot of people who live on the canals and have their boats there. It is that river that the storm surge will push up through and then push into the more inland areas of Naples, creating that storm surge and that flooding there. So that's of concern. But once the eye passes through, that's the point where we start worrying about the Gulf water surge coming into the area. And that'll be fascinating to see just how much this city can withstand that surge coming in from the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll see what condition those streets are. Everyone that was on the western edge of Collier County and in Naples was told to evacuate. By far, everything that I hadn't seen but maybe a handful of people on the western edge of this city over the last 24 hours. And according to various officials that we've spoken to, they feel like the vast majority of people evacuated those homes, either went to shelters here in Naples or started taking off and left town several days ago to get away from this storm. So that is the good news. It sounds like human life in the path of this storm, for the most part, has evacuated. Of course, that is not to say that everyone evacuated. First responders know that there's always going to be a segment of the population stubborn to leave and willing to ride it out in these conditions, so that they're prepared for that. And in speaking with the police chief on Marco Island, which is about 20 miles south of where we are, and that is a barrier island with about 16,000 people call that full-time as their home. The police chief told me last night, as the storm was starting to approach, that he believed that most of the people had evacuated the area, but they are on the island. 80 first responders, police and firefighters on the island, dispatched in various locations, high-level locations around the island to prepare for this. Those people are in the middle of this storm, perhaps even in the eye of the storm as we speak, probably trying to gauge the situation. But they had deployed boats, watercraft into various areas, prepared to launch any kind of high water rescues if need be, or if anybody was trapped and wanted to escape after that. But they're obviously waiting for the worst of this storm to go by. Chris?
All right, Ed, you dip inside, get everything together. Let me know when to come back to you. But Dave, I want to go back to Miami and check in with John Berman. But before we do, let's give you an opportunity to just get what it is here right now. You're not going to hear from me. It doesn't mean anything's happening, but just try and catch some of this sound and the sights of what is going on in Naples, Florida right now. Dave's going to give you the full pan of the situation and just take it in for what it is. This is what Naples has been dealing with for about an hour or so, and we have hours and hours to go. This is it. This is Mother Nature at her worst, and we're going to hope that we respond with human nature at its best. To John Berman down in Miami, we know you've been seeing it like this. We're getting some unique aspects here, John, because of this corridor effect we're getting where we are in Naples. How is it where you are?
I keep listening to your coverage, Chris, and as it gets worse there, I keep thinking it will get better here, but it just hasn't happened. Not yet. In fact, Miami continues to get hammered by powerful winds, gusts as strong as we've seen them. The rain may be let up for a second here, which is nice. And we did just learn that a second crane has collapsed now in downtown Miami at 30, if you're familiar with the geography here. So that's two cranes, one collapsed, or a possible failure in the crane. The bottom line is this crane is now hanging. Part of it is hanging down. These cranes, more than 20 of them in downtown Miami, a sign of the progress and the economic sort of boom time that Miami is experiencing, but they couldn't get them down in time. It takes 6 to a week to get a crane down. They didn't have that much lead time, so they had to leave them up. They secured them. We were told they were built to withstand 145-mile-an-hour winds. Now, I don't know whether we got that here. You know, down on the ground, 80, 90 miles an hour. We were told up in the skyscrapers there were gusts of 100 miles an hour, but it's clear at least two of those cranes have failed. Authorities are telling people not to go anywhere near the areas of those two cranes. And of course, it's not just the cranes that are a problem, also the storm surge, very much what we anticipate to see on the west coast of Florida. A very real problem at this moment in Miami. The streets that people know so well, Brickell Ave, covered in water, and it's very hard to move around these areas, and they're exact areas that Miami officials ordered mandatory evacuations for. They wanted people out because they were scared of just this thing. We were told of 4 to 6 feet worth of storm surge here. Chad Myers at last check said 5.5 feet, and 5.5 feet was enough to get over some of those storm walls and flood the streets. Where we are right now, when we've been out here straight days nearly, the water came up. The water came up, you can see the cement right here. It came up about a foot from the top. It has begun to recede because the tide is going out. So our immediate situation right around here appears to be better. The boats in this marina have taken a beating. Is behind the camera, you can't see it, but there was one of the larger boats at one point was tied down by 8 ropes. There was only one rope holding it on at a certain point. People rushing out and trying to secure it. I think maybe they did. We have seen parts of docks float off into the water here. And then another sensation that we saw for much of the morning was bursts of green light out there from Miami Beach. That is where Miami Beach is, and those bursts of green light were transformers blowing. And that, of course, meant that Miami Beach was going to be without power. They could be without power for some time. A lot of Miami-Dade has lost power as well. Again, just the beginning for what will happen in Florida as this storm has made the turn and heads right towards where Chris Cuomo is in Naples. And Chris, I've been listening to you. Hang in there. If it's anything like it's been in Miami, it's going to be a problem for many, many hours.
Yeah, and I mean that, the duration is going to be a big part of this story. I'm going to stand out of the shot right now, just so that Dave can give you Dave Rupp, our photojournalist, can give you the full effect of what we're getting hit with now, because it's certainly intensified. And the acute concern here on the West Coast is just the inability to absorb that much, because these cities and areas are so low-lying. And the extra component here, as Chad Myers has been explaining, will be storm surge. That hasn't even come into effect yet. Nothing here has been affected by what could be an additional 10 feet of water that could come in. It could come up many blocks. It could affect power. It could affect a lot of different things, and for a long time. And that's why evacuating was such a key concern. And it's important to note that they got lucky here. And I know that this looks like nothing close to luck, understood. But everything is relative in a hurricane. And the people here decided to evacuate days in advance. This is a little bit of a snowbird city, and the snowbirds, the people come down during the winter, so this is the off season. So there aren't as many people here, but of the 19,000 or so that the city manager said they were worried about, he believes as many as 2/3, according to the mayor, may have left in advance, and that's really important. Here's somebody coming down the road right now. It's not something you see too much, but I think they're one of us. I think those were media going down the road. You've seen almost nobody. That's a very good sign. You have not seen people out. You haven't seen awkward spectating or anything like that. We've been told that the police are keeping people away from the waterfronts. Now, that's really key. Chad Myers tells a really harrowing tale of what happened in Lake Okeechobee some years ago, where the water was gone. People went running out there just out of fascination and collecting fish and stuff like that were exposed, and then the water came back, and it was a lethal event. And God forbid, we don't want to see anything like that. And I know that they're trying to keep people away from the water's edge, because there's no question, you're seeing the pictures on the internet, it's really freaky to see where the ocean was, where a bay was, where a bayou was, all of a sudden be vacant. But in conditions like this, you just can't have it, John. I mean, this gusting, maybe it's a little different because we're a little elevated here. I'm probably, 25 feet or so off the ground. So maybe I'm just feeling it as more intense, but it is just twisting trees like twigs. Chad Myers, I'm never one to question your calculation, that's for sure, but I have to tell you, it's hitting us pretty hard, and it's making a difference. It's taking trees down with pretty much ease right now. I'm watching trees and parts of trees flying through the air. It's picking up, my friend. What can you tell us?
It is going to continue to pick up, and I know that doesn't sound reasonable, and you can ask John how long he's been standing in that brutal weather out there. I feel for you, John. You have a little while to go. I mean, honestly, it was an hour ago I said you're halftime. Now you're third quarter, but you're not fourth quarter. And for you, Chris Cuomo, you are now in the lightest part of the eye wall. The lightest part of the eye wall. You went through a small little outer eye here, and that's now moved to the north. Our Chris Cuomo right there, downtown Naples. But the major part of the eye wall here, you can see the difference in colors in the red. That is about to move over you. I would say that's 3 minutes away, and that is what's going to be hitting you as soon as we toss back to you, essentially. There's the eye wall. There's the eye wall. What I have noticed for everyone in Tampa is that the storm has slightly turned right. It's a wobble or a trend came out of the Keys, and now it has slightly turned to the right. If that continues, Tampa, you're going to be in much better shape tonight, because the storm, of the eye of the storm, will be right over land for a longer time. The original forecast was for it to come something like this and stay half on land, half off land, and that would continue to be a strong storm all the way to Tampa. If we continue to see this, then we won't see as strong a storm in Tampa tonight at about 8 or 9 o'clock tonight. But there is the eye of the storm right now. Chris Cuomo, heading to you. I can see damage already on some of your pictures there. Trees are going to be down. It's going to get worse. I would say you're going to add at least another 30 miles per hour onto what you just saw when you get that part of the eye wall right there, and that's 5 minutes away. Chris?
And then we have to deal with the residual storm storm surge and see what that does. You know, we spoke to someone on Marco Island. You're saying that the storm went over there as a Category 3. Wayne, please check in with us. Wayne is a 61-year-old man, decided to stay in his condo. He said about a dozen people, maybe a little less, decided to stay along with him in their own units. Please check in and let us know that you're okay, because a lot of the people who decided to stay behind wind up being our eyes and ears, as the first responders will be when they get back out, but they're not there yet. So just let us know you're okay. So, John, they're telling me that they're going to put up on the screen a radar comparison of where we are right now. I don't think either of us have returns. So maybe in the control room you can kind of talk us through what are you seeing in terms of similarities between Miami and Naples right now? Well, they're both being hit very hard at the information they're giving me, John, which I think we could have figured out. Go ahead.
Chris. Exactly. Thank you, Control Room, for telling us we're both being hit hard by the hurricane right now. But that is actually, I think, an exceptional image. Because if you look at the map of Florida, where Chris is in Naples, right? It's all the way on the west coast. I'm in Miami. That's on the east coast. We have all of Florida in between us, and we are both getting hammered right now by Hurricane Irma. And Miami has been hit since last night. We were out here last night beginning to feel the impact of these winds. So it's been nearly 24 hours of consistent winds. Chad Myers promises me we're in the fourth quarter of this game. If it goes into overtime, I'm not talking to Chad anymore ever again. Chris, you have a lot more ahead of you. But again, you know, Chad's the meteorologist here. It feels to me like the size of this storm is highly unusual, and the fact that it's delivering the force on both sides of the state is something we haven't seen before, and it's a contributing factor, frankly, to what you're about to see there with the storm surge as well, Chris.
are the real deal. Ed Lavandera is at ground level. We're up about 25 feet. And Ed, I got to tell you, it is like a sandblasting to the face. What is it like down where you are? And really, it's not about the levity, it's about the concern for the longevity. How long can Naples take this kind of pounding? And then when that storm surge comes in, then what? What are you seeing?
It's heartbreaking.
Chris, this is unbelievable.
We are going to closely watch these double threat in the Atlantic. Two big storms developing right now. Hurricane Jose could bring flooding and rain to the East Coast.
And Hurricane Maria is threatening to strike the hard-hit Caribbean. It's forecast to become a Category 4 storm and could take aim at the U.S. The Caribbean is already, feeling the effects this morning. Our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z, is here and has the latest on its path. Good morning, Ginger.
Robin, can you believe it? Here I am talking about two hurricanes again. Yes, I think that Jose is the first we want to focus in on, just because it's already happening. The images coming in from North Carolina, you can see some of the rough surf that's been impacting some of the Carolina coast there. That is going to move up the East Coast. And tomorrow especially, we've got Jose here some 280-plus miles away from the coast, but you could see 12-foot waves anywhere from Virginia and Delaware up through New Jersey, even Brooklyn. 12-foot waves. Can you imagine the impact and the beach erosion possible there? Tropical storm watches for up to 40, even close to 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts as this thing stays just in our enough offshore. And then we've got Hurricane Maria, and this one really will intensify in the next couple of days, 48 hours really. We'll be talking about its approach to the U.S. Virgin Islands, eventually Puerto Rico, but it's got to make its way through the Lesser Antilles first as it makes those intensifications. And then eventually the big question is, does it hit Florida? Everybody wants to know this, and most of the modeling taking it away from Florida. But we're going to be tracking that just as we track Puerto Rico's impact, and that's where we find our Rob Marciano this morning. Rob, another big one, headed so close, up to 15, even 20 inches of rain.
It is hard to believe, isn't it, Ginger? Our second major hurricane potentially hitting the same areas in less than 2 weeks. Here in Puerto Rico, they're already shutting down government offices and closing schools today. And for our friends in St. Martin and St. Thomas, I mean, they're still in for survival mode there. Food, water, shelter, they need it. They're passing out blue tarps just to give them something. And there's all that debris over there that could be flying around. So they're begging residents to try to pin that down with heavy rocks, whatever they can. San Juan's been kind of a hub for relief and recovery efforts. That's going to come to a halt as we wait for Maria. We did okay here in Irma, a lot of power out, fared okay, not a direct hit, but now we're looking at the potential for a Category 4 direct hit, and as we know from very recent experience, Ginger, that's not fun for anyone.
Rob, we feel so much for those islands, and of course, just to give people perspective, so active this season, we've actually seen the U.S. Virgin Islands, if they see it as a major hurricane, they've never had two major hurricanes hit this close to home in any season. So this is really starting to break records.
Boy, it sure is. Okay, Ginger, thanks very much.
We've been doing this since Friday after the storm. It's something like 10 days. We've been running 2, 3, 4 trips, 5 trips some days, back and forth to St. John and St. Thomas. It's stressing our crew, it's stressing our boats, but we don't see that there's anywhere near sufficient help from any government agencies or from the Navy or the disaster relief services. They just don't seem to be over there in the force necessary to take care of these people. We have a storm coming ourselves. We're trying to get our boats out of the water. We're trying to get them tied up, but we need to make at least one more run in the morning to St. Thomas and St. John, because there are people lined up that need to get off the island. People with babies, mothers are coming with infants, with newborns, leaving the husbands on the island. There are elderly people, there are people that are sick or injured that need to get off, and we're just doing our best to take these people.
And you're seeing the structures, they're not going to be able to take it. You can just see these trees are starting to split. And you're seeing that over time, this is going to create problems that they're going to have to deal with for a long time here. I mean, just look at this. This is water that's coming sideways here. Chad Myers, I know you're listening along with me. On the balcony where we're standing, as like a little microcosm of what we're dealing with here, there's just the little leaves and stuff from the flooding, from the rain, from the air, from the wind, has clogged up, so it's flooding the whole balcony, and that's what's happening to the roads. That's what's happening to the sewer system. And when that storm surge comes on top of it, what can they expect here in Naples, especially if they have hours of this to go?
They truly do have hours to go, and you have not seen the worst yet. I know that might be impossible to believe, but the real part of the eye wall that's going to go over Naples that has already affected Marco Island with a wind of 130 miles per hour is still coming. What you've received there is about 105 to 110, gusting back and forth, but you still have another possible 20 miles per hour added to that event. And you can see it appears to me like what all of the rain.
The two models, the U.S. model versus the European model, neither are making approach to the U.S., the 48 lower states. Here's Jose making approach only with its waves, big waves, could be 15 feet on parts of the East Coast, John.
Not even close to getting back on their feet. And now what are they looking at?
And the people that were in Barbuda, they moved to Antigua or to other islands because their island was uninhabitable. Now they're getting hit by the next storm in places that they evacuated to. Kate, here we go. 120 miles per hour, Category 3 hurricane, and it's headed to the U.S. Virgin Islands from here, right over Dominica today. This is the area that's going to get hit the hardest, and then right over Puerto Rico. Category 3, likely even Category 4. Hurricane Hunter flying through it right now. Hour ago, about 80 miles per hour. 35 minutes ago, about 90 miles per hour. And then they found the core. Then they found the key to this storm and why they upgraded it to a Category 3. The wind gust to 120 miles per hour. And the latest millibar, if you want to write this down, 958. So still dropping rapidly. By the time it gets to Puerto Rico, 150 mile per hour sustained winds. Now, this goes over the southern BVI, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Vieques, Culebra, and all the way into Puerto Rico as a major hurricane, likely Category 4, on the verge of Category 5, but at least so far not there yet. The water's warm. We know what happened to Irma. Irma was slightly farther to the north, but these two are actually going to cross. Here's day 5. Here's day 6, 7, 8 on the U.S. and the American models and the European model here. So we're not going to move very much after that. After 4 or 5 days, obviously it's entirely a guess. But I just want to show you that so far, South Florida, not in the cone and also not in the forecast when it comes to 7, 8 days away in the computer models. Nothing is out of the question. Clearly, we saw that with Irma. Where does the cross happen? The yellow line is Irma. The middle of this line here, the red line, that is Maria, right over the Turks and Caicos, right at the DR, right through Punta Cana, right through Dominican Republic here, and also into Puerto Rico, where we will see big swells on the east side of the storm, right over St. Croix with a damaging hit there. And then you think about the USVI and the BVI, and their houses are already torn up. It doesn't take a 100-mile-per-hour wind to blow things around, and they may get 120. Here is Jose finally just grabbing a bunch of dry air and killing itself. That's the good news. A lot of still some swells here along the East Coast and for New York all the way up to about Boston. We will see tropical storm warnings that were just posted from this. But really, Jose is not much to worry about, except if you stay out of the water, you're in good shape. But Maria is the one we have to watch for the U.S. East Coast and certainly for all of the islands there in the Northeast Atlantic.
And coming fast. I mean, that had going over Puerto Rico Wednesday. I mean, this thing is coming.
It is. And the fact that it's moving quickly and not stalled over any water means that it gets to new warm water quickly. And so that is more fuel to the fire. When it sits and spins in one spot like this is, like Jose, you kind of lose the water, you lose the hot, you lose the heat, you lose the humidity. So the storm kills itself. When it keeps moving, it keeps getting stronger and stronger.
All right, we got to stay close to this.
The latest is the Hurricane Hunter just flew through it. fought a deepening eye, just significantly lower pressure than we had just 3 hours ago, and the wind speed up to 120 miles per hour. That's why it's up to a Category 3 now. Really, Dominica in the teeth of the eye, but from Guadeloupe down to Martinique, those are the islands that are going to get hit with the first part of this storm. Then it kind of gets into some open water and heads towards St. Croix, into Vieques, and then into Puerto Rico. Now, this is an area that did see some damage, but Irma was slightly farther north than where we are now. Really, from the BVI to the U.S. Virgin Islands, that's where the significant storm was. And this time, they're on the south edge of that, not in the teeth of the eye. Here's 5 days from now, right there. That's as far as we can truly tell you what's going on.
Right for Puerto Rico. Hurricane Maria, the storm that has already delivered a direct hit on the island of Dominica as a Category of 5. Now, a brand new update has just been put out by the National Hurricane Center and what it means for U.S. territory. CNN meteorologist Chad Myers has a new forecast. So, Chad, what are we seeing right now?
The Hurricane Center just put out the 11 o'clock advisory just minutes ago, and we are still at 160 miles per hour. And this storm is still moving towards St. Croix and Puerto Rico. The U.S. Virgin Islands, the British Virgin Islands, all still in the cone, but so is Puerto Rico. The entire country, the entire territory, absolutely under the control of this Category 4, maybe Category 5 storm. So here's Puerto Rico. 3.5 million Americans live here. And here it comes, right along the shore, making landfall, if the center of the cone is correct, because the cone is getting smaller and smaller now, near Palmas del Mar, or Humacao. This is the area that will see the hardest wind damage. Across the area as well, there is a national forest there called El Yunque. El Yunque is a rainforest. That will be, damaged, but certainly it's not going to hit the populated area. Let's say if San Juan was on the southeast coast. San Juan's on the north coast. But San Juan is still going to have wind of 130 to 140 miles per hour. There will be weeks without power. There may be weeks without water. So this area, this territory, is certainly very much in danger of a life-threatening storm surge, a storm wind, and of course, flooding with it. 15 inches of rainfall possible across parts of Puerto Rico will make mudslides and really more flash flooding because it is a very well-forested area. So this island is so forested, we're not going to see the potential mudslides like we see in Haiti, where the deforestation has taken over so many of the land areas that mud comes down rather than water coming down. There's the storm right now, 160 miles per hour. We still have gusts to around 190. Hurricane hunters are in the plane, are in the storm right now in their plane, and they just found a 188 mile per hour wind gust about 700 feet off the ground. So not the surface, but 800 feet, 700 feet. And that's certainly some spots in the Caribbean are well above that. There's spots in the DR that are, 12,000, 10,000 feet high. So the higher you go in a hurricane, the more the wind is. And there are plenty of spots there that are higher than sea level. Kate.
And when it comes to places like Puerto Rico, I mean, of course, everyone's looking back in their hurricane history, but it's been something like more than over 80 years since a Cat 4, Cat 5 has hit Puerto Rico. We don't even know what could happen.
Now, 1932 was the last Cat 4, 1928 was the last Cat 5. So much has happened from where there were 1.4 million people, now above 3.5 million people. The infrastructure, the wires put up, the homes built, people living along the shore. It's a beautiful coast. Why would you not want to live along the coast? And so that's the issue we're having now. Where do we put these people? How do they get out of the way? But so many of these coastal homes and communities are not safe at this point. If you're talking about a 10-foot storm surge, it is very, very important before nightfall to get into a safe place. No way to move tomorrow morning.
Category 5 is the latest update coming from the National Hurricane Center. Chad Myers is watching all of it, tracking all of it, minute by minute for everybody. Thank you so much, Chad. So with Puerto Rico's 3.5 million people now in the crosshairs of Hurricane Maria, the governor there has declared a state of emergency, of course, but he also says that he's worried that people there aren't listening to these warnings. Listen here.
Complacency worries me the most. Some people might think
that the birds go in a hurricane, they go in the eye, because they know better. Chris, 20 more minutes, just like this.
Well, Chad, as you might imagine, Ed and I can't get into the eye, brother.
No, not yet.
So we're just trying to stay out of the way. We're trying to stay out of the way of these gusts while doing the best that we can to just keep an eye on the situation so that, you know, once it passes, we know where to go. I mean, I don't have to tell you, you've been doing the job at such a high level for such a long time, but, you know, you serve different functions. One is to be the eyes and the ears for the audience on the ground in a situation like this, again, to arrest the sense of curiosity. But also, once the first responders have to kick in and do their job, very often we're telling them where things happened from our own observations. And this is certainly going to size up to one of those situations because they can't get out right now. They've had to hunker down. Ed Lavandera is down below me. We're a team on this. He's been watching equal intensity from a different perspective down on the ground. And Ed, let me know when you can come back to me in terms of what you're seeing with the flooding and whether it's making an appreciable difference to these surrounding buildings by us. This is somewhat of a commercial area where we are now. There are residences as you get in the 4, 5, 6 blocks away where we are. As you get closer into the water, there are residences along the water. We don't give a damn about property in a situation like this. We're about protecting life, and that's what all the precautions were about. But you've got mega mansions down there. The governor has one. We're talking $10, $50 million homes that were built really close to the water, and as beautiful as that is, it's equally dangerous. Another huge gust coming down here right now. Remarkable that this tree is standing. I'm watching it split in real time, but it's getting there. Ed, what are you seeing down where you are? Let me step out of this.
Chris, I'm going to take a quick little step out. Oh, man. A quick little step out here so you can get a sense of just how quickly the water is moving through here on the street. This is the most severe gust that's pushing through. You can see the water. You can't even see 50 yards anymore to our right. The amount of water that's being pushed along the street and filling up here, and we're in we understand one of the higher areas here in downtown Naples. The water in other parts of the neighborhoods that we were able to survey this morning and throughout the day yesterday have to be an incredibly dangerous situation. The good news, as we've reported over the last day, is that many of the people here in Naples evacuated this area. We didn't see but a handful of people out and about throughout the day yesterday. So that is a good sign, because what is left behind, as you mentioned, it's just property. And the intensity of it and the flooding in this situation. Remember, this part of Naples is surrounded by water on all sides. So it's not just the Gulf waters that are going to be of concern. It's going to be the river to the side, to the east side of town here, as well as the canals and the homes through there. All of that water getting pushed up. This is just one little spot as you look down here on the street in downtown Naples, just how quickly the water can pool up in various areas. So you can imagine in some of the lower lying areas just how horrible the flooding situation is going to be. We continue to look here off to our east to make sure we're well protected here. Everything structurally, from what I can tell, seems to be holding on quite right, but I have never experienced the intensity of this kind of hurricane with the winds cutting down visibility the way it has, which obviously makes the situation even that much more disconcerting. But it is incredibly intense here as we approach and get closer to the eye of this storm, making and passing over Naples here. But it is quickly going to turn from a wind and structural story to this flooding story. Here comes another gust. I'm out. Whoa.
Can you see this, Dave? All right, so now we're getting it in full effect up here, Dave. Ed, it's not slowing down anymore. So this has to be what Chad was talking about, where it just keeps coming. Just keep coming. It just looks like some type of sideways cyclone that's coming down here with these gusts. And I'll tell you, Ed, Lavandera, me, we're not going to move that easily in a storm. We're both bigger guys, and this could easily knock you off your feet. But I'll tell you what, it's such an easier task to be here than so many of the people who are with this storm, with their families, with young kids, and they're inside, and they have to be praying to God that this just leaves them untouched and they get past. And that's the biggest concern. for us right now, we're fine. This is a very dramatic picture, as Chad said, and it's accurate picture. It's true. But your heart has to go out to the families. You're watching this coverage. If you're not in Florida, if you are in Florida, God bless you, and we hope that everybody's okay and you're safe and you have the supplies you need. This will pass. It's going to take longer than usual, but it will pass. But if you're watching this from somewhere else, just imagine, put yourself in the place of these families that are down here, and we'll see what their needs are afterwards. But this is something that they're going to remember for a really long time. And hopefully there is a measure, I hope, of gross inaccuracy in terms of what the net effect of this storm will be. I hope that it is more drama than it is impact, and that the places that have been touched from the Caribbean now up into Florida, and what happens in states northwest and a little bit east of here, winds up being less than we expect. But for now, that big part has passed. There's been a little bit of an alleviation. It's gusting that way now, but it's not as sustained as it was. There was about 5 minutes there where it just wasn't letting up. And the good news is, this one big patch of trees that I've been watching here that I was really worried about going in to the apartment building across, it hasn't happened. Now, I know Chad Myers is about to jump in my ear and say, don't count your chickens. I understand, but you take good results where you find them in a situation like this. And so far, the integrity of these big trees, these 200-foot trees, Chad, so far, I've been seeing some separation in them, not the palms. You know what I'm talking about, these other old growth trees. They've been splitting, but they haven't failed yet. They haven't collapsed yet. And if they can make it through this phase, maybe we'll get lucky here. But I have to tell you, Ed Lavender is a pro, as you know, Chad. He's been in a lot of these. I've been in many, but less than he, to be sure, and you, to be sure. But there is something unique about what we're getting hit with right now. Maybe you can put some words and some science to it for us.
Well, the only word I have, Chris, is eye wall. You are in the northern eye wall. You are going to, within the next 10, 15 minutes, be inside the eye. You may be able to look up and see the sky with not a cloud in it, and then be waiting for another hour or 20 minutes and get the wind from the other direction. And that's many times where a lot of the damage comes from, because the trees have already bent one way, and then all of a sudden they have to bend the other way as well. This is as bad as this storm has been truly in America. This is what the people of Sugar Land, this is what the people of Cudjoe Key, this is what the people of Big Coppet, Big Pine this morning, this is what they felt as this storm went straight over the lower keys. It stayed offshore, it gained a little strength but not much, and then it made landfall at Marco Island about 30 minutes ago, the eye wall doing 130 miles per hour when it hit Marco. And I bet you just had 130. Nothing to boast about, but that storm is still very strong, not losing any intensity really whatsoever.
So then it just comes down to duration. Now tell me this, when does the storm surge component kick in, and what do we look for there?
The storm surge comes in after the center of the eye moves by, and the bubble of water moves under the eye itself and pushes onto land. Now this is opposite of what we expect when an eye makes landfall on an east coast. This is a west coast. So the west coast now has the no water on the north and the water slam storm surge on the south side of the eye. Water's been pulled out of Tampa Bay, pulled out of Port Charlotte, and all the like up to the north. And in 20 minutes, when the eye goes by you, the eye wall, you're going to get eye, and then you're going to get the other side that Marco Island is already getting. Marco getting the storm surge flooding, and we are seeing that flash flood emergency for Marco Island proper. 10 to 15 foot surge on top of places that were completely dry. Honestly, the ocean bottom was exposed. 4 feet or so, the ocean bottom was exposed. You could see this. You could see the sand. You could see the fish. You could see the coral. You could see the sponge. And now, all of a sudden, that's going to be covered up with 10 to 15 feet of water. Chris, I am seeing you. Can you hear me, and can you go?
Oh, no, I have you. I was just testing out these hurricane specs that you told me not to waste the money on. You were right. So, Chad, what do we do when that storm surge comes in? What's the best way to help? What is going to be the list of immediate needs for the people there? And, you know, God willing, they can hear us. You know, we're running on battery power here. The hotel's out. All the lights are out in the surrounding area. In fact, I don't see anything lit up. They had kept the lights on here. I don't see them anymore. For people who are there and hopefully hunkered down.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
What happens here on Marco and likely other islands, are really city islands that are on up the coast, like Punta Gorda, that would have an awful lot of homes on canals, and many of those homes are less than 3 to 5 feet above the canal on a regular day. Now, all of a sudden, there will be 5 or 10 feet of water on top of their grass, and so therefore in their home. And this surge with the push of the water, the push of the wind, think of this water moving at 60 or 70 miles per hour, being pushed along by winds that are 120 miles per hour. That water will knock things down a lot quicker than the wind will knock things down. Water has so much more force. Now, to answer your first question, what do? You get Eddie Lavandera and that crew off the street, because that's where the water is going to go. You likely will be fine, second and third floor, but get everybody off the street. Chris, go ahead if you can hear me.
Chad, can you still hear me?
Yes, I can. I can see your pictures very well, Chris. So you can just start talking.
I can't hear anymore.
All right.
Let me go to Ed Lavandera and figure out what's going on. Ed, if you can hear me, pick up the coverage for me and let me know what you're seeing. We just had a huge gust here, and it blew out my IFB. I don't hear anything. So go ahead and pick it up if you can.
No problem, Chris. We are down on the no problem, Chris. We're down on the street here in downtown Naples. Kind of give you the continued sense of as this the eye of this hurricane gets closer and closer here to Naples. I've kind of tucked in behind a wall here to protect us from the worst of the wind. It's just too much. There's no visibility. If we can get to look down here on the street, the number of palm trees that are just blowing down the street, and that's obviously a major concern for us, because with such little visibility, you just can't stand out here in this. There's no reason to and be able to see that flying at you. That can cause serious pain and damage. So as we stand here a little bit more than an hour, we have endured these kinds of winds, this kind of rain. We're still not quite at the eye of the storm here, which we anticipate will be coming much closer, and we will continue to monitor that. So it is a situation that is clearly deteriorating, and after more than an hour of enduring this, you really start to have to ask yourself, you know, we're in downtown Naples, and the situation here in the buildings and the structures that we're surrounded by are strong, and from everything that I can tell from our vantage point, of course, in these types of situations, you know, we'll be honest with everybody, it's limited. We do not have the ability right now to venture out into the city by any means and get a sense of how the rest of the structures are withstanding this storm. We can tell you what we see here around us. There is an outdoor concert venue here, and has a soft tarp over it. I've been watching that for the last 30-45 minutes. I'm actually amazed that has not come peeling apart here with these winds that we've seen. I thought for sure that would start unbuckling as it is tied down here. But what is just simply stunning is how little visibility. We're down to maybe 100 yards of visibility here, which makes this even more treacherous. And as we've approached this and endured this for more than the last hour, it really makes you wonder in the rest of the area, homes that are not as structurally sound as the areas in the buildings that you see here around me, really makes you wonder, can the homes, can the buildings, other buildings around this part of Naples and southwest Florida, can it continue to withstand this kind of intensity for as long as it has? And there's still more to come. So that's a real question and a concern that we have here at this point.
All right, Ed, I'll take it from you right now. I was a little overly optimistic in terms of the worst stuff being through. I was hoping that that's what that was before. But she's back. And it is a big blow that's coming through here. And again, as you were seeing down there at ground level, ooh, Chad, this is the real deal coming through here. But so far, this tree line is holding. And it's so important for these surrounding structures, Chad, in terms of what they can do to things. As you know, we know what happens when these big branches blow off with this kind of energy behind them. We've been seeing it about this way now for about, 35 minutes or so. And everywhere around us, it's the same. It looks actually worse in areas that are a little bit west of us here. The trees that were there that I was using as markers before are gone. So, Chad, what are you seeing on the radar in terms of where we are from that most severe band that went over the island not too long ago?
You are about 4 miles from where there is no more rainfall. So, therefore, the inner part of the eye wall, 4 miles away. Now, if we do the math at 12 miles per hour, you're still in this, or maybe something slightly less than this, for another 20 minutes. So it's that duration thing you talked about. How long are people going to be in this when they're in their homes in the dark? This is a completely different animal in the daylight. When you are in your home and you hear things go bumping and you have no idea because it's dark and you have no power and you don't have air conditioning and you don't really have any communication with any of the outside world because the cell tower's already gone down, that's when it truly is going to be a very difficult night for the people from Anna Marie, Sarasota into Tampa, because they are going to live this as well. Maybe a little bit less, maybe 115, Chris, because I think you just had 130.
All right, well, whatever it is, it is. But here's what I can tell you, Chad. As you know, we're all pros. We are in the cover of a hotel. The crew is good. Photojournalist is good. I'm good. Ed and I are built for this. It's not easy, but I'll tell you what, it's a hell of a lot easier for us than it is for the people that Chad was just talking about. God forbid you're with your family and you're having to live through something like this. Our hearts, our thoughts are with those people. It's a big reason that we do this coverage. We will be here just as we saw with Harvey. There's going to be need. And we know that this community will come together. We saw it before the storm. It sounds trite, but it's true. The worst of Mother Nature brings out the best in human nature, and that's going to be needed here in Florida in big, big portions. And living through this part of it makes those of us who, God willing, won't be adversely affected by it feel invested, interconnected to those who are going to be affected by it. Because, Ed, from where you are down there right now, this is going to be something where everybody's going to have to count their blessings after this one goes through. Where is it? Where you are right now? How is it down there?
Hey, Chris, there's no question. Seconds after I tossed back to you just moments ago, heard a large crash about 15 yards off to my side. Part of the rooftop, these are the Spanish tiles of the rooftop that we're on, just came crashing down about 4 stories off the ground, crashed down on the ground around us. This is exactly what just landed on the ground around us. So, as I was mentioning, and as while we were talking, and the fortification and the structural soundness of the buildings that we're in, that we felt really good about where we're at. Not to say that it won't endure any kind of damage, but if these shingles and these tiles are coming off the roof here on these really strong buildings, You can imagine what it must be like in the neighborhoods and the areas surrounding closest to where we are and closest to the wall of the eye of this hurricane. So a highly dangerous situation as some of these tiles just flying off the roof, crashing down here on the ground next to us. And as we mentioned, we're protected. We're tucked away underneath an area here. And that's why you see that on camera that we're not getting blown around as much. We are simply not just going to stand out there any longer as the wall in the eye of this hurricane approaches closer to where we are. But this is it. This is just landing on the ground, and you can imagine all the other kind of debris that is flying around out there as this storm makes its way toward us, Chris.
All right, bud. So we got to make it through this phase. And then we have to deal with what Chad was explaining earlier as the redistribution of the energy. When the wind comes around the other direction and brings that storm surge, then you get another phase of this. And you also get a different dynamic just in terms of the mechanics of what it does to the surrounding structures and foliage. Chad, weigh in on this if I get it wrong, but I remember it from you, which is everything that's been fighting to stay up in one way is now going to get hit at its weakest angle the other way.
Correct. When
the energy redistributes and the surge comes and the wind starts coming from another way. Accurate or no?
Absolutely accurate. And I think the other thing to talk about is how powerful water is. And if you get a surge of 10 to 15 feet in that area, homes will be lost. The building itself will be lost, whereas a wind event, you can hide from it, you lose shingles, you may lose some roof, a sheet of plywood from your roof, but you won't lose your home. If you get hit by this storm surge that's still to come, that's when you lose things. Officially, I said 130. National Weather Service out of Naples Airport just had 131 18 minutes ago. You were in it. 131. That's, I hope, as bad as it gets. You're now beginning to get to a slightly inner core of the storm itself, and now slightly less in wind. And in 20 minutes, it may very well be calm.
Oh, from your lips to God's ears. When you take a look at the map, where are we in terms of that? Is that what you're showing everybody right now?
Yes. Naples Manor, which is about 3 miles or 4 miles south of you, is already in the eye. So they're in good shape. Golden Gate, you're getting hit, honestly. This is one of the neighborhoods that's really getting slammed to your west. Probably still 131 for them. But Naples down to 115 to 110, and it is going down from here as we get you closer and closer to the eye. Now less than probably 15 minutes before you will see all the palm fronds just fall down to the ground or just kind of limp down to the side of the tree because the wind will go to near zero.
All right, so that's what we have coming our way, and that's good to know from those who are monitoring it. We know we have a lot of people in Florida who are watching us. We're thinking about you. We hope that you took the right precautions. We hope that you're still able to follow the coverage. If you see us able to be doing what we're doing, hopefully the structure that you're in is going to be just fine. And what we've been watching us around us, as dramatic as it is, hopefully it's not as dangerous as it is dramatic. So far, this tree line is holding here, and these buildings are still protected that are around us. Less so on the other side. And you've seen things blow around in the air here, a little bit of point, not the kinds of things that I've seen do damage in the past. That's a good sign as well. But again, there is no cause for false optimism. We'll have to see what happens on the backside of this storm and with the storm surge. As Chad has been coaching us all along, the wind is dramatic. There's no question about that. There's a danger component to it. But it is water that kills. It's drowning that takes people's lives in hurricanes. And storm surge is not just powerful, but lasting. So we're going to have to see that. And again, I keep going back to timing, Chad, because especially when you're in it, that's just your natural reaction to it from an endurance standpoint is how much longer. And the scary part is, at least from the perspective on the ground, is how much longer there is. I mean, watching John and those correspondents, it's a long time, and things just only have so much tolerance whether it's a structure or a vehicle or even an infrastructure system of your roadways and your sewage. And I don't mean that just from some planning perspective. I'm saying backup of sewage, homes not being able to have livable conditions, you know, what they call habitability. I mean, that's what all this is about. It's about what all of this does to their lifestyle, Chad, and it's your perspective, your take on it so far, that you're getting why the governor was so conscientious about saying we're talking about weeks here. We're talking about commitment from the federal government for weeks and months, and in the billions in terms of what they estimated going into this. Do you think they're going